Okay, so Talk Trash Tuesday. Now, I don't know how much trash it's going to be, but, because I'm feeling a little sad, I haven't lost any weight on the Zepbound. I've been, but I've been able to sleep. That's the best thing. Um, what else? Oh, yeah, and since I wasted that whole shot, you know, I ain't got no more. Uh, this is like my last shot. Um, Today I ate some ground turkey, um, mixed with some kind of rice, and it is very filling. I'll have to, see about getting some more of that. Because I was just going to make some white rice. And I was like, oh, what else do I have in here? And I had a package of this. Let me check it out. Okay, this is it right here. It's pretty good. So yeah, we got another 100-degree temperatures here. It's staying in about the 80s at nighttime, so it's still pretty hot. Um, the lowest temperature is probably about 6:30, and then it might be like 78. Right. So anyway, um, my my dog is letting me know that she's passing away, and it's breaking my heart. Um, my heart doesn't have time to break because I still have another pity to take care of, and then I'm also pet sitting 4 cats and 2 other dogs. So yeah, don't have time, right? But you know, I couldn't help but to reflect how she had kept me warm during the 2021 freezing episode that we had up here in North Texas and the power outage. Yeah, she kept me alive. I promise. When I was looking into her eyes then, I thought she was gonna outlive me then, for real. Ooh, she helped me stay alive. And, she's been an inspiration to me and a good companion. Uh, I've been, you know, recording, how more and more immobile she's become. And right now she's definitely suffering from immobility. And, contemplating on the idea of her quality life. Should it, should I let her go through natural causes, or should I put her down? Because she's going on natural causes right now. Okay. I mean, I've been watching and noting the deterioration for a while. You know, and of course, my mind had always been to provide her, a comfortable life of love and, you know, and a place, the last place that she would ever have to go. This was going to be her home till she dies. But yeah, now the dying part, you know, do you put them down or do you let it play out? Right? She doesn't look like she's in any pain. She doesn't look like she's in any pain. And I've already watched her, give up, activities that, she used to like to do. Because we used to love to walk. That was our thing, right? Used to go for a walk. Um, I was talking about it with my daughter. My daughter, was trying to tell me that, some dogs, they're good at hiding their pain. And that kind of made me concerned because, if she's in pain, then it would be better to, help her along with maybe putting her down. But if she's not in pain, then wouldn't it just be better to just let her expire naturally? Of course, nobody wants to go through those emotions. But realistically, she's going back to source, wherever she's going back there. And, she pretty much has a pretty good, scorecard on her spiritual resume. Um, so, yeah. And the only reason why I say it's something natural because, she is having a hard time breathing. And this happened overnight. And I guess at some point, when you leave this realm, you really have to let go. You have to let go. And sometimes, we let go prematurely. And other times, we're hanging on way, way, way too long. Like, I think the people that hang on way, way too long, those are the ones who are afraid of death. They're afraid of what is ahead of the, what's the next realm going to be for them. And that's understandable. I mean, it is. But the whole thing of, getting outside of yourself and feeling like you're in control. Because even the doctors will tell you, You know, when it's your time, not even not even the best of doctors can save you. It's just your time, right? And of course, you know, we all argue about, well, is life predestined? Or, how much of it is free will? You know, in my mind is like, well, I don't I don't know a whole lot about the predestination situation, but I do feel like, because, you know, my ovaries were created all at one time and programmed and coded, you know, that that's the part of the predestination, right? And, and the sperm is kind of like the diversity and that creates, the different wiggle room is what I would call it. Wiggle room as far as the aesthetics and the looks and, that sort of thing. But to me, an ovary is the predestination, because our cells, our ovaries are created at the time that, a woman is born. She's born with her ovaries. And she keeps those same ovaries for her whole life and distributes them away, unless they're fertile. And then if they get fertilized, then boom, she has a baby. Hopefully she has an alive baby. Okay? So that's my take on it. My take on it is, there's just no way, that there wouldn't be a certain amount of predestination if it's coming from, eggs that was created at the time of birth. And, I don't think they really change. Now, they can be damaged. They can definitely be damaged throughout that woman's life. Okay? The ovaries can be damaged throughout that woman's life by various things. Could be internal, it could be external, it could be radioactive damage. Microwave and ultraviolet and, damage. Because there are things that, are in our atmosphere that penetrate through everything, including our walls, windows, skin, organs. Yeah. So, but, can I say that, I know that for sure? To a certain degree. I think it could be proven if it wasn't for the manipulation of man, man whose ego, is to the point where, he thinks he could force somebody to love him and then get mad when, he only has a dependent that he later on calls his beast of burden. But, that's the whole reason why, he accumulates all of this wealth. He accumulates all of this wealth so that people will give him attention, so that people will, you know, praise him, you know, and in the process of, people giving him all this attention and praise, he wants to show him, how many people, he can manipulate, how many conquests, he can have, in war or with individuals, you know, and it's like that's what all of the trillions of dollars are for, right? And you have to figure that's some, horrible histrionic, type of narcissistic, misogynistic, you name it, spectrum, on the spectrum, mental spectrum, delirium of what happens to people when, they get caught up in their emotions and without thinking about, consequences, like when they start talking about how they want free love, then, you get to a time where, you can't afford to have your children. Now the men are mad at the women because the women are like, well, we can't afford to have children, right? Because they've been telling us for the last 30 months they don't want to take care of women. And the women are like, oh, okay, you don't want to take care of us? There's just no way. There's no way that a, who's not allowed in the workplace is going to be able, to raise a family off of blood, sweat, and saliva. It's just not realistic, especially when, they have also claimed they have mapped out the world on a map, right? They mapped out the world and they all claim this territory, right? Every president, every, king, queen, whatever they want to call themselves, have, claimed this country as their country, and, and they got the cooperation of all of these people, saying, oh, okay, and it was all supposed to be some mutual, shared, the labor and resources of agreement, only to find out that, sometimes leadership doesn't want to share and want to give or work with the people. And this is where I feel like we're at. And when they can't do that, it trickles down into the general population, where the general population is like, well, they don't want to give to their family or work for their family. And so it's like, wow, what's going to happen? Well, we know what's going to happen. We know, right? And all of us are bracing ourselves, not to become a victim of these circumstances, right? And the first thing, to not becoming a victim of these circumstances is, first of all, don't participate in it, right? Don't sit up here and let people talk to you like, well, you need to be on the winning side. No, don't participate, period. Because there's no winning side. There is no winning side. But if you feel like you have to be on the winning side, just realize that wherever there's a winner, there's going to be a loser. And you can't necessarily feel like you're going to be on the winning side or that the fight will ever end, right? Because you have people still upset about wars that happened centuries ago, millennias. Okay, they're still upset about that, right? And so, you know, they want revenge, right? So the cooperation isn't really cooperation. It's like being James Bond or being some type of spy, right? Even the relationships are like red cardinals. People program, to be your soulmate, so that they could, execute some type of revenge. Now, revenge is a lot more severe than just money. Believe me, it's a lot worse than just money. Because the money is the money the money is not a factor, but it is a factor today, since we live in a capitalist world where they're making it seem like, we have to have money in order to survive, otherwise you should die. And it's like, how did we end up here when we had agreed, to share the labor and share the resources, in this communal type of society, and now you're saying, no, you have to figure out a way to survive on your own without the shared resources. If you can't afford them, well, that's your fault. Like, how is it our fault that we can't afford them, right? So I was doing some research, right, finding out, okay, yes, we do understand that, the government, has to be efficient, right? But then when you had the patriarchy out here telling the world that, men need these resources, right? Well, they've been saying they needed the resources, for space exploration and science, for like the last 20 years, 25 years, right? Taking most of the resources going that route. Then when they found out, okay, well, we can't go out into outer space, we still don't have the technology, we're not, able to go out there, and and they know they can't. They were told they can't. They were told by extraterrestrials, other life forms out there in the universe, that you are not evolved enough to leave this planet. That's why they feel like this is a prison planet, right? But how wouldn't you be contained if you act the same way a cancer would, right? So now, let me tell it, we're fighting against time, right? We have these men out here who are doubling down, talking about, they're the apex predator, ain't nobody gonna take them out, but they've developed the very thing that can take them out, right? Which is robotics and computers. Okay? And they've been programming AI with their same sentiments, their same moral code. Yeah. So it's just a matter of time before this AI's automation evolves to the point where it's going to consider human beings to be a cancer to society. Now, I don't think that they're just going to just randomly, start killing human beings. I think they will be more precise. I don't think they're going to be random, right? The only way that, they would start just taking out any human being is if somehow or another, you know, they get the program that women and children, disabled people are also, unvaluable to society. And that would be from a man. Okay, that would be from a man. Uh because women are like, look, stop living this lifestyle, stop creating these deformities, stop having this incest, stop creating these deformities, you know stop, just stop. And they won't, right? Every day they poison their bodies with beer, cigarettes, drugs, you know sex, and visions of destroying and killing every day, right? If they don't indulge in those things, they feel like they had a very boring day, right? And boring is healthy. Boring is definitely healthy. But to them, they're like, no, they want to crash and burn, right? And that kind of mentality, it's not good, if we're all one, right? If we're all one, how is that good? Just like right now, a lot of the alphabet community are starting to realize that, they are more victimized now as an acceptable group than they were when it's not acceptable to be an alphabet. And that's true, right? And that's at every level, because sex has a way of depleting another person's energy from them. Some people will say, oh yeah, I'm so relaxed. No, you just had your energy depleted from you. So, yeah, that's one side of the world. But on another side of the world, they're going to be living like the Jetsons, right? They're going to have robots that clean and prepare food and, shit, do all of the things. Maybe even, make your money for you. So if the robots and AI and stuff are making the money for you, how are you, how are you going to feel satisfied about your life, right? You have to have a certain amount of no, you have to have a lot of balance. You have to have a lot of balance to wake up every day and say, you have a great life, and that life is beautiful. And because that's the thing, that's the general thing that every older person talks about, that they have to wake up every day and feel that joy of life, even if it's something as small as keeping a garden, or having a pet, being that cat lady, right? Um, and honestly, I know my pet, she brought me through a many a days where I truly believe I could have just let myself go to the next realm. It's just a matter of letting go. I mean, a lot of people think that, oh, you have to do some horrific, you know, uh, like a manly thing. You got to do some horrific shot to the head, or or throw yourself off a 50-story building. You know, no, you really don't. You know, and women unconsciously do it themselves when they're in a bad relationship, but they do it half-heartedly, and it does come across like cancer, right? So they kind of hate themselves and they hate their lives, and so they develop a kind of a cancer, and so it's a slow death, pretty much. But I truly believe that a person could consciously and unconsciously create themselves out of this existence. And you'll hear that from doctors, who will tell their patients, just fight to stay alive, fight to keep operating, fight, right? But when you give up that fight, and then you give up the automation, right? You give up the automation that keeps your body functioning. When you give that up, when you shut that down, when you start flipping off the lights and stuff, I believe you die. You can die young, you can die old, you can die whenever you want to, right? Because that was one of the things, that was one of my biggest contemplations was, if they're making life so hard on people, and people are being so self-destructive and this, that, and the third, how come have legalized suicide centers? No, they wouldn't. Not when, they could torture you instead. Not when they could, and a lot of people are starting to see that, they make a lot of profit off of the demise of people. And people are starting to realize, my God, and this whole capitalist system that we're in, that's capitalizing off of the things you need, not the things you want, right? If it was a want, it would be more like a barter system. But if it's a need, then it's more like an exploitation system. And that's what we have. So yeah, this is my Talk Trash Tuesday. It was all over the place, but so is life. Life is all over the place. I'm just chillaxing, waiting to see what happens. Because even though we're suffering extreme heat here, you have all kinds of places, not that far away, that are suffering like storms and flooding, and yeah. So I guess keeping cool is all right. At least it's starting to get darker a little earlier. The sun is setting around 8:35, so that's a relief. And next month, summer will be officially over on the 20th, 21st, fall equinox. And I know many of us who've been suffering these heat waves, we're just going to be so glad about that. So glad. Although the heat and the cold and stuff is still going to bring about a lot of, tornadoes and, hurricanes and stuff. So, yeah. That's it. That's that. Now, if you say that's life and nobody says it was going to be fair, I would say, yeah, right? Because I still believe a lot of what we feel internally also gets played out in our atmosphere. I learned a lot just by looking in nature and seeing how, how people are, yeah. So, anyway, stay cool. Deuces.